the conversation around the Indiana Fever took a dramatic turn the moment Kelsey Mitchell stepped in front of the microphones. On the surface, it sounded like a veteran praising a teammate. She talked about building chemistry with Ty Harris and helping her grow into a bigger role while Caitlin Clark continued recovering from injury. But within minutes, those comments had spread across social media, and the discussion wasn't really about Ty Harris anymore. It had become another chapter in the ongoing debate over how the Fever are handling the league's biggest star. Then another claim began circulating. Reports and online personalities started alleging that Sophie Cunningham had privately confronted both head coach Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell over what she viewed as the team's treatment of Clark. That allegation quickly became the headline, but it's important to separate what has been confirmed from what remains unverified. Mitchell did publicly praise Harris and discuss integrating her into the team's process, and White confirmed that Clark was completing an individual workout rather than practicing with the full team. Those facts are on the record. The reported confrontation, however, has not been independently confirmed by the Indiana Fever. Even with that distinction, the reaction was impossible to ignore. Some fans heard nothing more than a veteran supporting a backup guard who was being asked to contribute. Others believe the timing of those remarks, with Clark sidelined and questions surrounding her recovery, sent a much different message. Suddenly, every quote, every substitution, and every injury update was being viewed through a completely different lens. And that's where this story stopped being about a single press conference and became a much bigger conversation about leadership, perception, and the pressure surrounding one of the most closely watched teams in professional basketball. As the week unfolded, the attention shifted away from wins and losses and toward a simple question that nobody seemed able to answer clearly: when would Caitlin Clark be back on the floor? Instead of offering a detailed timeline, Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White explained that Clark would be doing an individual workout rather than participating in full team practice. It was a brief update, and while there was nothing unusual about a coach protecting medical information, the lack of additional detail immediately fueled more speculation than certainty. At nearly the same time, Kelsey Mitchell spoke about another topic entirely. Asked about the team's priorities, she emphasized building chemistry, improving discipline, and helping Ty Harris become more comfortable in the team system. Mitchell even shared that she had reached out to Harris with words of encouragement, saying she wanted the backup guard to feel confident in her role and continue building on her recent performances. Neither statement directly mentioned any conflict with Clark. Yet for many fans, the timing was impossible to overlook. The franchise's biggest star was still working through her recovery away from full practice, while one of the team's veteran leaders was publicly highlighting another point guard's development. On their own, those moments could easily be viewed as ordinary parts of a long season. Together, however, they created a narrative that spread rapidly online. That was when the conversation became much larger than basketball strategy. Some people saw veteran leadership in a player doing exactly what experienced teammates should do by supporting the next person ready to contribute. Others interpreted the same comments as a sign that the team's priorities were shifting at the exact moment Clark was unavailable. The words themselves never changed, but the way they were heard depended entirely on which prospective fans already brought into the conversation. This is the moment that kept getting replayed. It wasn't a dramatic outburst or a heated exchange. It was a routine media session that, depending on who was watching, told two completely different stories. Mitchell spoke about discipline, team chemistry, and the importance of helping Ty Harris settle into the team system. She explained that Harris deserved confidence in her role and even revealed that she had texted her encouragement after a recent performance. On the surface, it sounded like the kind of leadership expected from one of the team's veterans. For one group of viewers, that was the end of the story. Injuries are part of every season, rotations change, and experienced players often make a point of supporting teammates who suddenly find themselves playing larger minutes. From that perspective, Mitchell's comments reflected a locker room trying to stay together while waiting for one of its biggest stars to return. But another group heard something entirely different. They focused less on what Mitchell said and more on what she didn't say. With Clark still recovering and unavailable for full practice, some fans expected to hear more discussion about preparing for a return. Instead, they heard repeated praise for Harris and interpreted the emphasis as symbolic, even if that may not have been Mitchell's intention. The conversation quickly shifted from basketball to perception. That is why the same press conference generated such different reactions. The actual words remained unchanged, but every sentence was filtered through months of existing debates surrounding Clark's role, the team's rotations, and the pressure facing the Fever organization. Once that happened, every compliment, every injury update, and every coaching decision seemed connected in the eyes of many fans. Whether those connections reflected reality or simply the emotions surrounding one of the most closely followed players in the sport became the central question, and that uncertainty is exactly what kept the discussion alive long after the microphones were turned off. Almost immediately, the conversation spilled far beyond the press conference room. Clips of Mitchell's comments spread across social media, and within hours, fans were breaking down every sentence, every pause, and even the body language shown during recent games and media appearances. What began as a discussion about roster depth quickly turned into a debate over leadership, trust, and the direction of the Indiana Fever. One side argued that the reaction had become wildly exaggerated. From that perspective, Mitchell was doing exactly what veteran players are supposed to do, building confidence in a teammate who had been asked to step into a larger role while Clark recovered. They pointed out that praising Harris did not automatically mean diminishing Clark, especially with the team's starting point guard unavailable for full practice. The opposing view gained just as much momentum. Those fans connected Mitchell's comments with White's brief injury update on Clark and began revisiting previous substitutions, rotations, and post-game interviews. Individually, each moment could be explained on its own. Together, many believe they formed a pattern, even though no official statement from the organization supported that conclusion. Then came the claim that intensified the debate even further. Reports circulated online alleging that Sophie Cunningham had confronted both Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell over Clark's treatment inside the organization. That allegation fueled countless discussions and reaction videos, but it is important to distinguish between widespread online claims and verified information. While the confrontation has been widely discussed by commentators and fans, it has not been independently confirmed by the Indiana Fever. By that point, the story had evolved into something much larger than one interview. Every new practice report, injury update, or media appearance was being viewed through the lens of a fan base already divided, with each new development reinforcing beliefs that had formed long before Mitchell ever stepped to the podium. As the debate grew louder, it became increasingly important to separate the actual statements from the conclusions many people drew from them. Kelsey Mitchell's comments were centered on discipline, team chemistry, and helping Ty Harris become more comfortable within the Fever's system. She also shared that she had reached out to Harris personally, encouraging her to stay confident in her role and continue building on her recent performance. Those remarks were made publicly and are part of the record. What Mitchell did not say is just as significant. She never stated that Harris should replace Caitlin Clark, nor did she say the team was better without Clark. Those conclusions emerged from fan interpretation rather than from Mitchell's actual words. For some listeners, her praise reflected normal veteran leadership during an injury absence. Others believe the emphasis on Harris, given the timing, carried a deeper message. The same comments produced two very different reactions because they were filtered through an already emotional conversation surrounding Clark's role. Stephanie White's comments followed a similar pattern. When asked for an update on Clark's status, White's response was concise, explaining that Clark would be doing an individual workout that day rather than practicing with the team. She did not provide a detailed recovery timeline or elaborate on the injury beyond that update. That brief response became another point of disagreement. Some fans viewed it as a routine coaching update, consistent with how teams often handle player injuries. Others felt the limited information created uncertainty at a time when public interest in Clark's recovery was exceptionally high. The difference between those perspectives highlights why this story continues to generate so much discussion. The confirmed facts are relatively straightforward, but the meaning people assign to those facts varies dramatically. In a situation where every public statement is scrutinized, perception can become almost as influential as the words themselves, even when those interpretations go well beyond what was actually said. The reason this story continues to dominate basketball conversations goes well beyond one press conference or 1 week of injury updates. Caitlin Clark arrived in Indiana with unprecedented expectations, transforming the Fever into one of the league's biggest attractions almost overnight. Every lineup decision, every rotation, and every public comment now carries far more attention than it would for most teams. That reality creates pressure not only for Clark, but also for her teammates, coaches, and the organization as a whole. Veteran players are expected to lead through both words and actions. Coaches are expected to balance player development with winning games. At the same time, fans expect the franchise to clearly build around the player they view as its cornerstone. Those responsibilities don't always align perfectly, especially when injuries force adjustments to the rotation. What might normally be viewed as routine basketball decisions can quickly become major talking points because of the spotlight surrounding Clark and the Fever. Public perception also has a way of shaping future conversations. Once fans begin looking for patterns, every substitution, media availability, or injury update can reinforce opinions that were already forming. A brief comment intended to encourage one player may be interpreted as criticism of another. A cautious medical update may be viewed either as standard practice or as unnecessary secrecy. Neither interpretation automatically proves intent, but both influence how every subsequent decision is received. That is the challenge facing Indiana moving forward. Winning games alone may not quiet the discussion if communication continues to leave room for competing interpretations. Likewise, a healthy return for Clark will not instantly erase the questions that have surfaced over the past several weeks. Until the team's actions, results, and messaging consistently point in the same direction, the conversation is likely to remain just as intense as the basketball itself. As the attention surrounding this story continues to grow, one thing has become increasingly clear: the original press conference is no longer the main focus. Instead, it has become the starting point for a much broader conversation about expectations, communication, and how one of the WNBA's most closely watched teams handles the spotlight that follows it every day. The next chapter will likely be written on the court rather than at the podium. When Caitlin Clark returns to full action, every rotation decision will be examined. Every substitution will be compared with previous games. Every post-game interview will be dissected for clues about the team's direction. In a season where public perception has become almost as influential as the box score, even routine decisions are unlikely to remain routine for long. The same applies to future comments from Kelsey Mitchell, Stephanie White, and the rest of the roster. Fans who viewed Mitchell's remarks as simple veteran leadership will be watching to see whether that same encouragement is reflected across the entire team. Those who believe the comments revealed something deeper will be looking for confirmation that supports their interpretation. The facts may stay the same, but the debate surrounding those facts is unlikely to disappear overnight. For now, the confirmed information remains relatively limited. Clark continues working her way back from injury, Mitchell's comments about Ty Harris remain part of the public record, and online claims about an internal confrontation have not been independently confirmed by the organization. Everything that happens next, from Clark's return to the team's evolving rotations and future public statements, will likely determine whether this press conference becomes a forgotten moment in a long season or the beginning of a much larger story that continues to unfold.